Today we are going to talk about God. Specifically, we're going to address the big question, what do I mean when I say God? And this is a good question for those of you out there too. When you say God, what do you mean? The answer really isn't as clear as you first think it would be. Once upon a time, I wrote an article. I was going to write an article about this very question. And I thought it was going to be easy. But it turns out defining God is rather complicated. Part of the reason that defining God is complicated, and part of the reason there is so much confusion, is that this word God right here is used to describe too many things. The ancients didn't have this problem. God, which is actually a term that came from the Norse, this word God that we use today comes from the Norse. To the ancients, there were the gods. Each ancient group had the gods, and they also had the big God who created everything. The problem is, you could probably see this in play right now, is that the same word is being used to describe little gods that are ill-defined, and the big God, which is ill-defined. But the problem is, we also use the word God to describe somebody of awesome power. Someone who's, let's say, you might use it as a descriptor, like, I am a sex god.
Oh, yeah.
Or I am a god with money. This symbol right here, that means with. I worked in mental health for a while. This is a shorthand for with. Take this with that kind of thing. So, what do we mean when we say God? Well, let's talk about the ancient philosophy behind God. So the definition, the way that the ancients believed in God, or saw the word God as we would use it today, a God, supposed to be a O, a God is anything with a greater consciousness. I'm not sure if I'm spelling that right. Consciousness than us. If there's a being out there that has a greater consciousness than you or me, then that person is referred to as a god. And we still do this to some extent today. I mean, you could argue pretty effectively, I think, that a saint is no different than a little god, little g. But there's a bunch of instances where you have people like Pythagoras, or Orpheus, not to get too critical here, but the person of Christ, or Jesus, the original living, breathing Jesus, was given godhood. It's an argument to be made. I'm not going to state whether or not he's big God or little God here. So, these people, in their own times, were given deity status. Why were they given deity status? Because it was thought that their consciousness, here's their brain. It's a bad brain. Let's erase this brain. For some reason, I'm having a hard time drawing a brain. Their consciousness was higher than our consciousness because they were so smart. If we lived 2,000 years ago, Stephen Hawking would probably be called a god. So, there is always, always, always a little magic line that separates the gods and the people who were given godhood, kind of this community here of saints and deities. There's a special line that was drawn between them and the Creator of all things. This is important because you need to understand that even way back then, there was a separation. So it is easy to understand now that I hopefully I set this up good enough that this will make sense. There is only one God, and there are many gods at the same time. So you're probably now asking, how is this possible? And that's a good question to ask. I would be asking the same question too. How is it possible that there's only one God?
Hello, man.
But there are many gods at the same time. Well, the creator of all things is big. The creator of all things, in fact, is so big that there isn't anything outside of it. It's just darkness. Or that's the best descriptor that we get for what is outside of the creator of all things. The creator of all things is called the first cause. And it's called the first cause because it was the very first thing to set all things in motion. In motion. This comes from the law of cause and effect, as you can imagine. Law of cause and effect. Something like that. Law of cause and effect. The first cause was the thing that caused all other things to begin. And because there is nothing outside of itself, there is nothing outside of the creator of all things, this entity must use its mind in order to create. That's very interesting, isn't it? So, that means you and me. Hey, buddy. And your dog. There's a little quickly drawn dog or some whatever. I don't know what that is. Whatever that creature is, it also lives within the mind of the all. All things live in the mind of the all. This is why it was also said that the all is all. The all is all and is in all. The profundity of it is more than what a human mind, I think, can wrap our minds around. So that also means, though, that not just you are here, but the God's little g is also here. And so that the God's little g might be way higher than you. Like their consciousness might be way up there. However,
goodbye.
They still exist in the mind of the all. Inside this first cause. Now, people might be skeptical about this, right? They might be saying, well, I don't believe in God, and, I think this is silly, that all of what we are exists inside something's mind. Well, and I understand why you'd be skeptical, right? I do. The thing I like to point out, though, is that not only Stephen Hawking, I'm not even really sure how to spell his name. Hawking? Is there an L in there? Stephen Hawking and, Neil deGrasse Tyson? There's a bunch of them. And there's a bunch of theoretical physicists as well that say over and over again that when we look down at the smallest pieces of creation that we can see, it looks just like thought or a simulation. So this isn't some religious fanciful idea. This isn't just, something I just made up on the spot. This is actually, scientists are actually talking about this. This is something that's being actually discussed in scientific journals and stuff. But this idea isn't a new idea. I mean, this is older than this idea comes to us pre-pyramids. This was here before 5,000 years ago. This isn't really very new. It was certainly not new on, our capacity to understand time. So there's just to recap real quick. So there's two different kinds of God, right? You have what you could call the big God, or the all. The Pythagoreans, his cult, called him the monad. M-O-N means one. It's where we get money from inside of this being right here. We have everybody else. So this is something to keep in mind. And I know this is kind of a new idea for people. So I understand if you don't get it or don't believe it. Because we are inside the mind of the all, we are part of the all, you and me. If you think of it like you are daydreaming, and you have these little characters in there, and maybe they have a sword, and maybe you're fighting some awesome battle, or maybe you're on a boat. Inside your mind, these characters have lives, thoughts, feelings. They perform actions. They go through strange and unusual events. This is no different from the all. And just like you just like you have thoughts and feelings, so do the people and things inside your mind. So the things that you produce inside your mind share the same mind as you do. You occupy the same mind space. So that means that if you and the all share the same mind, it means you and the all are part of the same being. I know that sounds weird. I get it. I get it. I know this is different. This isn't the kind of thing you learn in Sunday school. But if you're part of the same being, that makes you, on some level, a god. If you think of it as a continuum, layers of being, you being way down here, the all being way up here, and each progressive layer, the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The difference between your sphere of influence and the all sphere of influence is simply degree. So you have to understand that because of this, your thoughts have power. You may not be in a place where you understand how much power they have, But your thoughts create. Your thoughts bring things into existence. So that's the difference. That's the difference between big God, little God, and you. Do you agree with me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you disagree? Leave some comments below. Tell me what you think. This should be really interesting to hear your thoughts on this. Now, as always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hey everybody, I love you and you have a good day. Bye.